Madeline Anderson-Balmer, your host for It's All Creative. Are you coming to your life half-hearted or wholehearted? It's a question today's guest asks herself every day with every project, job, and in fact, her life. Why waste your time doing things half-heartedly? Why do something your heart isn't in? As you'll hear, Beth Heather Macy has been living her life in a way that is directed by joy and what brings her fun. But fun isn't always what you think. Heather is an acknowledged right brain, left brain combination, but her career, both in the military and in high tech, is decidedly left brain. Yet she uses the strengths of that process of thinking into her right brain loves of art, painting, nature, and having an unplanned career that resulted in her current job as a writer of the Moscow Nights series of spy thrillers. She is starting on book 4 and sees no sign of the story ending soon. As we chat, you'll hear Beth talk about the old adage, write what you know. It's something I heard from teachers back when I was in high school, and it always felt unfair. I hadn't really even started my life. What did I actually know? Which basically meant I couldn't write, yet I'd been writing from the time I was in elementary school. Beth Macy, however, is drawing on a life filled with adventure, including travel, military life, living in Russia, being a veteran of the Cold War, growing up among the oil paints, and coming from a family, including her sister, of incredible artists. She's also a fitness enthusiast, working as a trainer, and has worked in cybersecurity, social work, and as a teacher. But the one thing that is a constant is creativity. Our conversation runs the gamut, from strategizing publication of her books, to what is essentially Swedish death cleaning, to finding joy with her dogs, sharing art exhibits with her sister, working with editors, and what kind of feedback are most conducive to her continued creation, and where her inspirations lie. Beth's beginning with a major in both math and chemistry would never sound like a start that ends with painting and writing novels. But people's lives can surprise you. I think today's episode also includes a few surprises. If you'd like more information about Beth's books, her art, or any of the other things we talk about today, please check the links in the details section of this episode. I hope you enjoy our discussion, that you check out Moscow Nights Return, and that you'll subscribe for more from It's All Creative.
I am Beth Heather Macy, and I live out on Plum Island in Massachusetts. And I have known Madeline for more years than we probably want to say at this point. But it's wonderful to reconnect because since Madeline, since you moved, I haven't seen you for quite a while. So
I know, it's been a long time.
It's been too long. It's great to see you. It really is. And we're back in touch because I happened to mention that I wrote a few books.
Yes.
Retirement is good for me. Stop it, sweetie. I have a Couton de Tolière. They are wonderful dogs, but they're part terrier, and they tend to be a little vocal. So if during the podcast you hear this dog, that's
Not to worry. We've actually recorded one with someone down in Florida, and it was during a thunderstorm, and the dog was afraid. So the whole time you heard this, what sounded like a little tiny dog going, and then when he jumped up on her lap, it was a German Shepherd.
Oh my God. Well, Lady Violetta of Plum Island is about 16 pounds.
Aww.
And she looks like a shrunken sheepdog.
Mm-hmm.
She's got a beautiful terrier-shaped face. As you can tell, I love my dog.
Nothing wrong with that. We love ours too.
So
what are you doing? You're writing books.
Yes, I'm writing books. Well, you see, I retired, and everyone said when I was going to retire, "Oh, Beth, you'll never be not doing something." And before I retired, I had always wanted to write a spy novel. So I started in 2019 writing a spy novel, and I just kept on. It just poured out of me. I kept writing, and then of course, the pandemic came. But I kept on writing. I was working just part-time at that time. So it gave me plenty of time to write. And I do believe in the adage of writing every day.
Mm-hmm.
that you really do have to be disciplined about it to be able to finish it. And I found a wonderful editor, and she really taught me how to write.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
And so she got me through book one. And unfortunately, she wasn't able to continue as my editor because of a lot of stuff going on in her life. Those pandemic years were a little bit much for many of us. But anyway, so I wrote the first novel, but there was more in me. So I decided not to go forward and try to get it published or anything, and keep on writing. And so novel number two, but I wasn't done. So novel number three. And then I decided to get all three edited at once.
Oh, okay.
So that any of the changes in novel three could be, rippled back to one, and vice versa and so forth. So after I did all that, I thought, well, I'll get a publisher. Well, apparently a lot of people wrote books during the pandemic. I mean,
Yeah, they did.
So they have to do, right? So you go to the agents and they are swamped. And I have novel number 4 bubbling up. So it's like, okay, fine. I'll just find, because I have self-published before. There wasn't anything akin to this. It was a book that I wrote after my mother died. A little bit of a self-help in some ways, and her history. So I decided, not to go through that route, because it took me like 4 months, and I didn't want to take that long. I wanted these things out. So
Yeah.
I got an illustrator and have been working with an illustrator on the covers. Novel number 1, Moscow Knight's Return, is up on Amazon now.
Cool.
The ebook and the paperback and the hardcover all up on Amazon. And I'm working on rolling out the others. And so I always knew that I'd do something more, like, I was in high tech for so long, right? So
Right.
it's right brain, left brain, right? You got to use both sides, right? And so
you do if you have both sides. I think some people don't have both sides.
I do. I tested cerebral, so I decided I thought I would be an artist, and I have done some art shows and sold some of my paintings, but I just love this writing too. It's another side of creativity, and these characters. It's really funny, and I've heard this from other people, is your characters become alive almost, and they take over the book, right? So,
They do. I mean, because I've written forever, and I wrote when I was most miserable, was when I was most prolific as a writer, and at the time didn't really consider publishing, but that was ages ago, eons ago, in the early 90s and late 80s, and I'm still looking for the manuscript, because I definitely want to look at it again from a different perspective. I'm gonna get this audio out of here. But I actually, stopped writing. I started writing a lot at work and really supporting creative writing as something. But when I retired, because I retired a year ago in June, and my sister last winter, she's really into poetry, and so she had said to me, you should do this writing thing too. In February, it was a challenge from Writer's Digest to write a short story a day, and they prompted you every morning. So you have to go on, and they didn't tell you how short the story needed to be, but I limited myself to 2,500 words, because to me that's like an easy 30-45 minutes to write. And so I was doing that, and you met like a cool community, checked in, shared your writing with people, they gave you some feedback, and at the end of the month it was done. So I did another type of a challenge that they had set. The guy was going to select writings and publish them, which he didn't do. So, that was disappointing. But then I wanted to start writing a book. I did this challenge thing with the podcast, and then I decided I'm going to turn one of these short stories that everybody seems to fall in love with the characters into a book. So I've been writing that, and I hit 50,000 words. I tried to finish it in September, but life took off. without me, basically. I had to stop. And so I hit the 50,000 mark early in December and decided to share it with a few people to read and give me their feedback. Beta readers aren't as honest as you think they're going to be when they say I can do it, and then they're like, oh my god, I haven't read anything. So I have a few that have read it and gotten some good feedback, and I'm determined to finish. So I get it, and you get attached to these people, and I'm like, I really like the characters, and I know their lives, I know all their backstories and everything, but the readers don't. So I either have to use them in another story, or I'm going to have to expand on them in this book.
Yeah, it's as they grow, as they develop over the books, then you get to know them more, and you get to know their backstory, and you want to go on with them. And
you don't want bad things to happen to them, which I had to with one of my readers said, what's the twist? What's the angle? This is like way too happy, this life. And so, he was right. And I kind of got into a stall on writing until I came up with the twist, which was inspired by a book he was writing that was missing a very large occurrence in the world, and it was being written as though that never happened, which is COVID, like you say. And he had people traveling on very specific dates, and I'm like, yeah, no one was traveling then because there were no flights anywhere. And he was like, oh my god, I totally forgot. So I used that as my twist to bring characters together and
nice.
Share what results, because some people blossomed during COVID, and some people, they lost their lives during COVID. So I mean, there's like a lot of stuff that was happening, and you can certainly draw on that as part of the twist in your story. So that's what I did.
Yeah, my stories actually go through the COVID period, but don't deal as much with that as with since these are spies out in the world, they deal, there's a little bit of the politics of the time period that in that, and they travel in wonderful locales. I think it would make a great series or movie because they're all, and most all of them are places I've been to, so I can sort of expand upon the place and the culture. I did get a few beta readers who did commit and read, and one said she was disappointed she had to sleep because she couldn't put it down.
That's good feedback.
And I liked that. I really did. And I liked that both males and females liked it, because I wanted to do, I love thrillers, right? But a lot of times you'll pick up a thriller and there'll be no characters, really. It's just like a bunch of people running around, bam, 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 chase, kill, right? And I wanted to really develop these characters more as the fuller picture of who they are. And of course, that develops over the period of time in the books. You get to really know them a little bit more. And I'm thinking of there's some prologues that show some of the reasons why some of them ended up being in the careers that they're in, and being the people that they are. But I'd like to at some point do a prequel, but that's not where my head's at right now. I'm sort of keeping on following them through. So I think it's interesting
because I haven't thought of a prologue, but that may help with some of my struggle, because I dropped them into a big event. It's like kind of like boom right at the beginning, and then backstory to how they got to that big event. And then, there's crime and abuse and blah, blah, and it goes on. But this pre-story to them, how they all got together as friends, is important. So I think I'm going to have to write a prologue.
Yeah, I found it was really useful because, especially since, one of my premises on the spies is that the Cold War never really ended, right? Even though it ended. But and a lot of people don't know about the Cold War. So, some of the prequels deal with some of the stuff going on during the Cold War, and then we come to today's era. So you can see as these people came, some of them are older, some of them are younger, and so there's the different techniques that spies use from the two different periods, and I don't know, I have so much fun writing them. I'm itching to get to the next book. I had to really slowed down this year because my sister decided to have a Macy Woman art show. Like,
Nice.
right, so okay, Deb, I don't have time for that. So, and then you have to have about 20 paintings per person as you fill a gallery, right? So, so that meant all summer I was in my studio wildly painting.
Because you can't use anything that you've already painted. You want it all new.
Well, yeah, mostly new. You want, some of the old stuff's fine. I sometimes I price it a little lower, so okay, take it, be gone with it. And it's great because I sold a lot of paintings, and I love seeing my paintings go to good homes and people who appreciate them. But and I have another show coming up this September, so this summer will probably be frenetically painting. It's at the Refuge here.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I have a seagull I want to paint, an eagle I want to paint. I already have a blue heron painted, but the blue heron paintings tend to sell really fast. So I may paint another one. People tend to like them. I don't know.
That's great.
Yeah. So that and writing book 4. Plus, I want to, not just throw these books out and say, oh yeah, okay, done with it. They're on Amazon. I really want to do the book tours and get them into some of the book shows and some more PR around them, and really see where they can go, because I of course am prejudiced. I like them.
Well, you should. If you don't like them, that'll be a problem.
Yeah, that would be a problem. But other people have given me wonderful feedback on them, and I think, well, what the heck? It's a good genre, and I think they're fun characters if you like assassins and spies.
Well, and like you said, I mean, if you want to think of it as a screenplay, then you've got to try to maybe do a little head starting on some scripting.
Yeah, that's gonna wait right now. But yeah, I did actually look at a site, Boker, that does the ISBN for your books.
Yeah.
Well, they partnered with this site that partners up with producers and so forth, and they help you actually script your book and get it scripted out to producers, or sometimes the producers just take the book. But I think, well, okay, I'm going to wait a year on that first, and to see how much buzz I can get around the books themselves. They're selling about 5 a day. That's not going to
That's good.
That's good. That's a start. And
I'll get the link for people to buy it. I'll put it on here because since I started this podcast, I think in the middle of the summer, I started to get 3 countries besides the US listening to the podcast. Just in the past 2 weeks, it's up to 9 countries. So wow. I'll get your link out there. Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of fun to see what happens. Like you said, you don't want to waste the energy if you need to do changes and you need to make sure that something's solid and fully fleshed before you put it out there. You want to make sure that's done.
Yeah, and these were so fully edited. I spent a lot of time making sure, and while book 1 was going through its editing passes, I'd start book 2 and juggle them that way back and forth. But they were really, really clean compared to anything else I've put out there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I hear, because I was talking, one of the guests I had during the summer was Felina Hopkins. I don't know if you know her, but she writes a lot of romance novels. She has a whole series, but that has over 60 books in the series. Wow. But she's got a system. She writes X number of words a day and pumps them through constantly. And she's like, cranking out the books. And, she took a break for a little while. She had a lot of stuff going on in her life, and she took a break. And, then she came back and she said, I think I'm going to need to rework some of the books because I want to make sure that these books are what I want as my legacy. And I think that's part of it. You don't want your name attached to something and it's like, ugh, that's not really, that's not fully what I would have wanted for it. You don't want to put it out there until it's what you're proud of.
Yeah, and I figure anything that I do tackle, I tackle with a zeal and a professionalism, and the same way with writing. I want it to be good. and to really hold together. And so, I mean, I was a math major, chemistry major. So, these other sides of me have come along later in life. But I've learned a heck of a lot, and I really enjoy it. It's such a process of, I go to sleep and I wake up. I've been dreaming about my characters, and quick, grab a pad of paper,
I know I have a little sticky notes on my phone, and I wake up and quick type a couple things into it, put my phone back down. It's like, I can't forget that, and
Yeah.
that's how it works. But you say you were a math major and you're into the techie world, but you've always had creativity in your life.
Yeah. I've always, I grew up, my mother was an artist. And so, I grew up among oil paints and watercolors, oils, acrylics, there was just artwork all over the house, and I was posing for her. And so I think some of that seeps into you. Plus, the art gene, comes to me from both sides. So the Macy side apparently had a lot of artists, Wendell Macy and other Macys like that. And then my grandmother was an artist, my mother was an artist, my sister is an artist, older sister, and I'm an artist, so that, and then I think, I think the high tech helped me with, because, when you're releasing a product, you have to be systematic about it. And I think that really helped me attack the books into as a product. I'm going to release a product, I'm going to go through the right stages, and I'm going to meet certain milestones. And, every day I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write. I never, it's interesting, you mentioned, the capping, saying so many, it's easy for you to do so many words. I'd hit some days and I'd be like, wow, there's nothing in there. So, but I would spend that time, if there was nothing coming out, I would spend that time going back through and editing the book, because I found that, you can take like 20 passes through a book and you still find typos. I mean, it's amazing. So, I'd start at the middle and I'd go forward, or I'd start at the end and I'd go backwards, and I just would attack it from different angles so that I wouldn't get into this rut of where the first 3 chapters are spackling clean and the last one is
the big mess. Yeah. No, I mean, for me, when I get into I have nothing to, I don't know where this story can go at this point. I write backstories. So a scene from a past or a scene from the future. I'll just like imagine one character or multiple characters spending a day together or doing something personal and write out the scene. So, it may be a page and a half, but at least it gives me ideas in the back for memories they can have, or why do they have a certain tick or a certain behavior or a certain phobia, that I can bring into the story that gives them more of a depth of character.
I'm going to steal that.
Go ahead.
As long as you don't have it patented, I'm going to steal it.
No, I don't. Because it just helps me, because it perks their personalities in my head. And then that helps me to pick up where I dropped off. You know what I mean? Like, because then all of a sudden I'm back in their hearts and souls and feel where they are. And then I know where to go with the story.
Yeah. Because you really do have to be in them. You have to feel them. You have to see what they're seeing. And if you're not there, you can't do it. It turns out to be something you crumple up, and that's bad.
Well, right. And I mean, it reminds me of, the things they put on their faces now, and you can see the reality, those virtual reality things. It's kind of like that. It's like writing virtual reality. So you put them on and you see them through a situation, and boom, all of a sudden now you see the rest of their world.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
I'm taking that. I'm stealing that.
Okay. So your first book, I know that you were writing somewhat about your parents, I thought.
Yeah, after my mother died, I found my sister had basically cleaned out her house, and I went to see what was left. And I found a box that was an old trash bag box way in the corner that somebody thought was trash, and inside of it there were all these airmail letters that my mother had written to her parents back home when she was over in Asmara, Eritrea with my dad. My dad was flying for Alaskan Airlines that had gone broke, so it contracted to the newly formed state of Israel to fly refugees from different places, from Asmara, Eritrea, and other places into Israel. And so my mother flew over there, and they got married over there. Their wedding certificate was all in, I think, Egyptian or something. I read it. Are you really married? But it's interesting because it was an operation called Operation Magic Carpet. It was funded, through the U.S. To help Israel, and they were flying refugees who were. It was like another wave of settlement, but it wasn't the fighting men, the strong people who originally founded Israel. These there was a lot of objection in Israel because a lot of them were sick. That meant they'd need care for, penniless, etc. And they did things like, they had never flown in a plane before, right? And so they'd come on with their goats and their sheep, and they had to stop them from starting fires in the middle of the plane.
Wow.
And then, at one point they lost an engine, and they were flying over Arab territory, and that's not a good place to go down with a plane going to Israel. And they managed to land in a semi-friendly country. And my mother was like, whoa, she's seeing the world, right? So she wants to go down the gangplank, and luckily Dad caught her in time and is pulling her back up the gangplank as these guys come with guns, because nobody was supposed to deplane there. They were just going to fix their engine and let them go. So it must have been quite an adventure. The letters home, my mother was doing a lot of shopping. They'd go to Hong Kong, she'd buy teak furniture, and she was shipping all this stuff home to her parents. But it gave me such a view of her. I found this, of course, right after she died. And, here was a woman that I grew up with who never left New Bedford. She was scared to drive.
Oh, yeah.
And she flew halfway around the world with my dad. She sat in the co-pilot seat. I'm thinking, who is this woman? And so it was a lovely view, and it really helped me. I was going through a period of time processing her loss. It was a great loss to me. And so writing this really helped me. One reviewer, one person who read the book said, I was so sick of this woman crying. Well, I'm sorry, that's where I was at the time.
Yeah, even you go through those things, and if someone doesn't want to read it or experience it, then they can move on.
Yeah, too bad. But it was funny because I was seeing two therapists at the same time, and I had said in the book, and I was letting them read it, I said in the book something about that, the Kleenex was too far away. Well, each therapist, when I went in the next time, the Kleenex was right there with the wastebasket.
Well, like I said, when I first wrote, it was a miserable time in my life, but I found that I could write so much. Like, I think that writing and painting too is probably an outlet that you can have when you can't put words to everything else. You can put it down in writing.
Yeah, it can be very cathartic to write or paint. And I know there have been times like I lost my golden retriever, and I did an abstract painting right after. And I look at it now because I still have it, and the feelings that are in that thing.
I remember that painting.
Oh, yeah. I just can't, I couldn't have articulated it, but I could paint it.
Yeah, that's very cool. So you're talking about self-publishing, and I know I've been working with, Writer's Digest is a place that I look for for prompts and things, but I started looking at Readsy.com. I don't know if you're familiar with them. No. It's a British company, and they have a lot of resources, not that you need resources, but just saying, if anybody's listening and wondering, how do you get an editor? How do you get an illustrator? They have all those things there, and you put out a bid basically and say, this is the services I need. And the people come in and bid for you and give you quotes, and it's just a really cool platform. And I haven't tried it yet, but I'm going to dump my book into it. They actually have a platform you can put books in and then break them all out in a template to fit for being reviewed and sold online. And I don't know if they charge for actually publishing them through them, but it's an interesting site because it has a lot of resources that people could find interesting. How do you find the people that you're working with?
I actually, the first editor, I just Googled all of the place. I found this editor who didn't take a lot of people, and she vetted you before she would accept you as a client. And she had done some really good books, and I thought, oh, what the hell? She's not going to take me. But I'll try, right? And so I sent her this letter, and she took me.
Wow.
She asked for a sample. I sent her a sample, and she came back. She said, "You can write," and I'm like, "Yeah, okay, good." And she was just wonderful. And I would have stayed with her for the whole series of books, but then when all this stuff happened to her, she couldn't keep up with her client list anymore. And I wanted to keep the novels moving. My next editor, I won't say anything about, because I've been trained, if you can't say anything good, don't say anything at all.
Okay.
But I found through, I think it was New York Editors or something like that. I thought, well, I'm going to try, this. What the heck, they're probably more pricey, but they had gotten really good reviews. Of course, you never can believe what you read online anymore. Who's writing the reviews, etc. But there were enough of them that I thought, okay. And I got this great editor. His wife spoke Russian, because my books have some Russian in them, since I had learned Russian when I was working over in Russia. And so what the hell, smather it in there.
Put it in there.
But that causes a problem, because if you try to spell check, you have to spell check in both languages.
Oh yeah, yep.
And then it's also the context of what you've got with the Russian. Does it make sense at all what I'm saying? Because sometimes I'd write the Russian for my head, and then I'd say I gotta translate this. And of course, Google Translate is odd at times.
It's not always reliable.
It's not always reliable. So I was really delighted to have a native Russian speaker look at the Russian in the book. So that was good. That made me feel good. So he did a great job. I would use him again. And he was also very complimentary. And it's great, because you go through this. It's like when I painted, I had this teacher once who would look at what you painted and go, ew. And you think, ew, what's you? Is that good? Is that bad? I mean, it was just like, and then, or she'd grab your paint and go, more paint, and squeeze this glob on your, and it was just like torture. And I had this other teacher who was a doll, and she'd praise what you had done well, and then she'd point out a little area for improvement. And give me one little bit of praise, and I'll go 10 miles.
Right. Yeah.
And so what I loved about my first editor and my last editor is they would point out what I was doing well, and then correct the other areas. And that, I'll tell you, it was great. Yeah, they had me, I'd write 24 hours a day for them,
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because my nephew writes a lot. My niece does as well. And he was chosen, they go to Fantasy Con or something in Sound in Georgia, and his short story was chosen for inclusion in an anthology. And, at that point, and it was not really, it was like a novelette, I think, or something like that. It was it was fairly lengthy, and but not long enough for a novel. And, he had to work with an editor. And so suddenly it was like, oh, it's good enough, but not good enough, so he kept having to cut things and rewrite this scene, and you need to talk more about this. And, so then when his sister was getting ready to submit something, he said to her, don't be too attached, because when it goes through editing, all kinds of things are going to be made, changes made, and you're going to have to go with it, or you're not going to get where you want to go. And she wasn't that thrilled with that idea. She thought, no, my work is my work, and it is what it is. But he learned a lesson, and he's continuing to write. So it wasn't, the fact that it was chosen for inclusion in this anthology was the compliment, I guess. Hey, you're going to be in this book with all these other authors. And, he was like 19 or 20 at the time. So, not an experienced author, but it's been out there all over the place. It's kind of he's gone to this conference to meet the authors, and then suddenly he's one of them, and it was kind of a different, ooh, I'm one of those people, it's a different perspective, which is very cool.
It is cool, because I think, when I finished with my first editor, it was just, I felt so good, and she knew by now. Being a math major, there was a lot of stuff I didn't apparently pay attention to in school in English. And I'm like, what's this? And she would just put a little comment in the margin. You know what needs to happen here. I'd be like, oh yeah, I see it now.
Well, it's funny because when I have my person he gets back to me. Well, I heard from him last week, I think, and usually every Monday, but for a while we've been kind of, because I put my book on hold for a little bit, but he will highlight, I love this scene. This seems so simple, but so real. This is not something you read in a book as part of the formula. This is a real story that people would do. And I said, those are things that I did in my own life. So I put them in there, and it started to teach me what the teachers always said with writing: write what you know.
Yes.
And I used to hate that. I'm like, I'm young. What do I know? I haven't been anywhere. So basically I can't write anything is what you're telling me. And, I think that kind of feedback, for someone to say, wow, this is true, this is an authentic story, it gets you that. It gets you there because it's something that you've discovered. It's something that's excited you personally.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that I let us stop it. I like so much about these books because, having been, I was in the military, I was in high tech, I am still a licensed mental health counselor and an ACE certified personal trainer. So in these books, I could use bits and pieces of all of them.
Hello, sweetie.
Okay, Violetta, say. He says, I am all amped up. Okay. Go. There's nothing there, sweetie. Nothing there. Go. Nothing there. Nothing. Okay. We're out of things to put treats into.
Oh no.
Oh dear. She'll be about 20 pounds heavier after this podcast.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
She is sleeping next to me. She gave up because I patted her twice and that was it. So she's done. She's sleeping next to my chair. So as you're writing your books, do you feel like you're comfortable in this specific genre, or do you feel like there's other genres in your heart that you could write about?
I love this genre. I think it and I can go a long way. I started out, it was going to be one book, and that was going to be a trilogy. And now it doesn't seem like it wants to stop yet. So I just want to go with it as long as it will go.
So it's like the Agatha Christie constant stories, or is it one big story?
It's one big story because it's people living their lives. They're odd lives, but they're living their lives and doing stuff. And so, I haven't gotten to the point where, I no longer have them inside or feel them. in any way. I still sort of feel the characters and see the characters and think they can do more. I think, it's sort of like when I was working, I did things that I enjoyed, that I really, really loved. I never planned my career. It was more of, this is fun, right? And so I'm at a point right now where, gee, this is fun. So why not keep it going? And it is also a fun way to spend retirement, because I need a project. I always need to be doing something, whether it be, helping fix something on someone's house or my own house, or painting or writing. I need to produce. That's always been me. And so, will another genre come out at some point? I don't know. This one feels right for me because it also helps bring in all the parts of who I've been and who I am.
Yeah. I think that's like I said, when you include those things, perhaps not exact replicas of the moment in time that you're using, but those experiences, those feelings, those habits or whatever, what they are.
Yeah. And, having been a Cold War vet, I am a Cold War vet, that helps bring in some of that stuff into the here and now of these books. And having traveled extensively, I love them traveling through some place that I love to travel through. So it's almost like going on a vacation. And it was especially good during the pandemic when we couldn't go places, right?
Right.
Now I may have to go someplace to research.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Maybe you need to create a tour that touches on this European tour from your book, and the Far Eastern tour from your book, and things like that, which would be kind of fun.
Yeah, I think it would be. They're actually, I think, some of the little ideas I have that are starting to form for book have different locales, and so it will be interesting to see how those flesh out.
Yeah, I interviewed, I don't know if you know Bob Restino. He's an author. He lives up in Maine, and he used to live in the town that I grew up on. And I never met him, but he was a friend of a friend that had referred me to him. And he writes historical novels, not historical romance per se, but he dedicates himself to the time when the Roman troops were coming in through the UK and all that era of. And he's a military man, lifelong, and was also into marketing. And he's drawn those things into his novels and kind of entwined them into those eras. But he's fascinated with the fact that military maneuvers haven't changed much since Roman days. And yes. So it was an interesting conversation with him because he talked about how he draws on all of that. And, how he kind of pushed the envelope when he was working in his non-military life and doing marketing and pushing against boundaries and saying, what's going to happen? Let's see what happens. So it's kind of the same thing. It's like you lived a life and are living a life where perhaps it's not traditional. Perhaps it's not what people expect when they meet you, but it brings you to where you are today.
Yeah. And that's the thing of, having taken so many different branches and not taken a conventional route through life, and having so many things that I have done. It's great, I think, because it allows me to have the breadth of perspective that I have, and helps me with these characters. When I look at some of the tougher characters, as well as a trauma therapists, you meet some pretty tough guys. So it's been great because I could draw on some of the stuff, not of course the people themselves, but some of the the stuff and the feelings of what they bring into some of my characters. And you know, growing up in Charlestown and knowing the mafia in Charlestown, right? You know, it's great to have a Russian assassin that's modeled on a mafia guy I knew, right?
Yeah.
So
It's true. I mean, it's true. And I think that, so if somebody's listening to this and says, oh, I want to be like her, I want to do X, Y, Z. And how would you, if somebody said, I want to live your life, and I know I just did an interview with myself last week and talked about the jiggity jaggedy path I followed in my life. What kind of path would they have to follow to be you?
Wow, that's an interesting question. Good luck, people. No, you know, I think one of the things that I've always been my guiding star is to be ethical, and to try to not be a namby-pamby do-gooder, right? But to do right in this world. You know, when I was a high-tech manager, I wanted to be the kinder, gentler high-tech manager and not burn everybody out. You know, and so, you know, I think that I have followed my gut, I've followed my instincts, but tried to do it in a way that was above board and ethical, and people haven't always liked it, but I once had a mentor who said, say what is so when it is so, but also pick the time and place. But, you know, I do believe in telling truth to power, as, you know, in the right way, so it's heard. You always have to make sure that the hearing's there, right? Otherwise, you're just blowing your stack. And that's not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've just sort of tried to follow a life that way, and also to say, okay, not, oh, I'm only going to do it because I know people will go, oh, well, this is fun, I'm going to go do it. I always wanted to be responsible. I grew up poor as anything, so I always wanted to have enough money to retire. So I always made sure I worked my butt off. I mean, I was working 60, 80 hours a week in high tech, and being in the military wasn't the most fun thing. You know, wouldn't say, oh, I'm going in there, it was fun. I went in there because I couldn't figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. So it was a responsible, reliable thing to do. So I spent 5 years of my life growing up. And it grows you up really fast. But I think, you know, I think that's it. You know, I haven't done, there's a lot of people who get by on networking and making sure that they know the right people. You know, I haven't. I just like-minded people who are going to be straightforward with me. You know, I don't like deceit. I don't like lies. And so I'm attracted to those people, those groups, those jobs, and things that have meaning, for me. And everybody's meaning is different.
Well, and it sounds like, well, you said you don't do things that you don't enjoy.
Well, I do things because not everything's fun.
Well, true. And that's true. But you looked at the value of the thing, like military, I mean, there's some people who enjoy it. I know I have a friend that graduated from high school and she's still in the military all these years later. She was one of the first female classes at West Point. So, you know, but she's continued to stay in the military and involved with them. But for others, you find the value, you take the good and leave the bad.
Yes. Yeah, it's sort of like I went for a 6.5 mile run this morning, right? You know, was that an enjoyable thing to do, especially having overeaten yesterday?
No.
No, you know, but, you know, it's something that keeps me healthy. You know, I was hit by a car back in 2016 and couldn't walk right. Wow. For a while. And, you know, the only way I'm going to keep walking is by continuing, by running, by walking, by exercising. I also, when I came back, I did a workout because it's the only way I'm going to keep on my feet and going to keep walking. Is that stuff always fun? Man, no. You know, there are days.
But you enjoy the benefits of it.
Yes, it is. It's a, you know, it's a cost benefit type of analysis, right? Like, do I want to be as healthy as possible for the remaining years of my life? Yes. How do I get there, right? I do things, physically and work out, then not everything's fun. Some days writing isn't fun. It's like, oh, I don't feel like doing this today, but too bad, it's my job. If I look at it as it's my job, and some days it's a blast. And other days it's like, no, I'm just going to be disciplined and get my butt in the seat. Well, I have a standing desk, so, but you know what I mean. And just go at it. And I think that's everything I've tried to do professionally, and to bring myself into it fully. I had a mentor, Angeles Arian, and she's passed, but what a wonderful woman. She was an anthropologist and a psychologist, and she was
Wow.
of origin. And she used to say, are you coming into life full-heartedly, or are you half-hearted? And it's a great question to ask yourself, am I doing this, full-heartedly, or am I half-hearted? And there was a time when I was consulting, and I was traveling too much, and I'm in front of a group, and I'm trying to do training, and I'm just dead. And I stopped, and I looked at them, and I told them about Angeles, and I said, right now, I'm exhausted. I am right now doing this half-heartedly. So we're going to end a little early. I'm going to go back and get some rest. So tomorrow, when we pick things up, I can be full-hearted for you. Because I think that's the important thing, that we do come into everything, our relationships, our friendships, our professions, our hobbies, come into it full-heartedly, because if you do that, you get back the joy too.
Well, and you also know, like, I know my career, like, as you said, I was not a technical person. I flunked math, and yet I made my living in finance. So figure that one out. But I always went into it with a full heart to say, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to put my own spin on it, and I'm going to make the fun that I can, that I enjoy doing this job, because this job is what's paying me and let me be able to retire early. And, that's kind of, but when and it was probably pre-COVID that I started to get that feeling of, I'm not able to come into this full-hearted anymore. It's just not working for me. And at the time, it was not good timing for me to quit at that point. And so during COVID, we gave it some real serious thought. Where do we want to live? What do we want to do? Let's reduce our expenses so that I don't have to work if I don't want to, and I think that was kind of the impetus when I realized my heart's not in this anymore. Doesn't mean I didn't work my hardest and still do everything that I did, but bringing my whole self in anymore didn't seem appropriate. And so that's when I knew, okay, this is not for me. I need to go into something different, which I have done. And I feel some days I need to take a nap and I go do that. You know what I mean? Some days I want to go for a walk or go meet a friend for coffee. And I do that, because that's where my heart is now. And that's where I give my energies to now.
That's lovely. Because, I just recently read an article that talked about how we don't always love what we do, but we can enjoy what we do. And that the more we feel that we are enjoying what we do, the more we will enjoy what we do. And I think there comes a point where it's important to enjoy life more fully, right? Because we spend a lot of our younger years just really working our tails off and wanting to get to a point where you can be self-sufficient in retirement, right?
Yeah.
But also there comes a point in life where you start to say, there's not that many days to really enjoy, or friends, the COVID, losing people. And it really brought home and not being able to see people, it brought home how important those friendships are. and how we need to spend more time, strengthening those parts of self and life and enjoying it and taking those breaks to take a walk. And so, I'm glad I did work my butt off when I did. Because I'd be an insecure mess right now otherwise. But now it's great to spend more time doing the things that I never fully did. I find that when I was painting, when I was working that much, you get like an hour here, an hour there, or I'd take a vacation just to paint, right? And now it's wonderful because I can just immerse myself into a painting, and my painting is so much better.
I agree. I think to myself, I can't just, although sometimes I do sit and say, I'm just going to write for 45 minutes, but I need to know there's a few hours there.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
if I have to rush out to do something else, then my head's on that. It's not on, oh, I don't have to worry. I'm free, for the whole afternoon. And maybe I do just write for a half an hour or an hour, or maybe I write for 3 hours. And I need to know that I have that flexibility ahead of me so that I can be fully myself and be in my head and hear better.
Because then often you do more in that half hour.
Yeah.
When you give yourself 3 days, I have 3 days, I can just do whatever I want. And then in a half hour, you do what you were hoping to do in 3 days, and you go, oh, wow.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yeah, it is interesting. So one other question that I like to ask my guests is, when you leave this earthly plane, whatever you believe is coming after that, what would you like to leave behind here for anybody that ponders you?
I often think of that. There's even these self-help books that what do you want people to think after you've gone? I would like people just to know that I lived an authentic life, and that I have been fully me. My sister's an artist, and she's painting like crazy to leave her paintings as a legacy. And I just have never thought of anything concrete in that way, because I think that probably is, but I would like it to be how I lived my life, and for people to have seen that, and to hopefully every once in a while been touched by it. I mean, I have had people write me years later after I've been their manager, very nice letters about what I've done for them when I didn't even think I was.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's nice already. When I was a teacher, I used to think, well, if I can get through to one student, that would be enough. And I did, actually. I had this one student I was teaching, and he came after school every day and did nothing. And one day he solved a problem on the board and got so excited, it was amazing. He was this tough guy, leather jacket, he was excited about solving a math problem. And I went, wow, that's great. And it's that type of thing that maybe, I hope that my grandniece is able to see who I am, who I have been, and maybe, you never can, nobody learns from anybody else that way, but you always do hope that the younger generation does learn something.
I think we've been talking about that because, and like you said, you didn't know your mom until after she passed away. And, we've been talking all the time at the holidays. You think about, holidays past and what relatives you got together with when you were younger or didn't get together with for who knows what reason. And, I think of times that I had when I was in college. I interviewed 2 of my aunts that were at our house for a picnic. And I brought them in the house, and I had a little tape deck, and I recorded them talking about their youth and telling ghost stories and what were some of the, old wives' tales that you listened to when you were younger. And, and that opportunity to sit with them was almost like them going back in time. I could see them together chatting and sharing their own experiences with each other, and I just recorded. I didn't really talk a whole lot. And I donated that recording and the transcript to a folklore museum. It was part of a class that I was taking. And but I wish I saved it, because I didn't know them as anything other than these ladies that made Christmas dinner and yelled at us to be quiet at the kids table. I didn't really know what they did, and that was like a glimpse into it. So I feel like yourself, you're talking about what you're doing, and you're sharing authentically who you are and all of who you are, and writing and painting and being out there as you, not just as a character in a family tree. I think that's an awesome legacy to leave behind for future family to think back, because they will know you.
That's why I am hoping through the first book I've written, and through seeing the different things that I'm doing, that they will. I'm trying to declutter the house, because nobody wants your old shit, right? But maybe leave a few things. Like my grandniece did want to know what I looked like in high school, because she's at the age where I think she's trying to think, well, who does she look like? What, right? And so I sent her this picture of this sort of depressed kid with this ponytail, kind of a little overweight, and I got back up, wow. I was like, okay. But hopefully it we're always looking. I don't know. I am always looking at pictures of my dad and my mom and my grandparents and going, okay, who had this little droopy eyelid here? And oh, that's my mother's neck. I can tell that. And oh, I got my great aunt's mouth. And it's just really interesting to physically see bits of them in you.
Oh yeah, I mean, I see my brother a lot in my face, especially when I'm up close and putting on mascara, and it's like I'm putting mascara on my brother's eyes. Very freaky. But people that see me, my relatives and cousins, like, oh my God, you look just like your mom. And like, I didn't know my mother. I did know my mother at this age. I hung out with her a lot and we traveled together, but I didn't see her. You know what I mean? Like I knew her the whole time I was growing up. So she always looked like she did from when I first remembered her. I didn't see the change happening. And now other people see me after years have gone by and they're like, wow, do you look like your mom?
My books behind me, as well as, I've got Elizabeth Warren, RBG, Obama, Fauci, Pelosi. I love my little dolls.
They're so awesome.
So at some point, this is going. I'm slowly cleaning out some of the therapy books that aren't good as any reference books, and I've decided I probably won't practice therapy, even though I keep my license up, because I think that's a fascinating field anyway. But I still do personal training. And so, I've got books on that, and
But you have to keep things that matter to you. Like, I felt responsible for keeping some things.
Yeah.
Because it was handed down to me by my father or my mother, because they had it handed to them, and we need to keep it in the family. And I don't have children, and my nieces and nephews, they don't want it. Doesn't matter to them because they weren't around to see it in use. And so in some instances, there's some items that I look at it and think, am I enjoying this? No.
Yep.
And like I was looking at, I love cut crystal. It's just something that I just really always have loved and admired in people's houses. And so we were emptying out a china cabinet yesterday, because it's really hard to get into because it's full of stuff. And I pulled out one piece and I said, I'm going to see how much this is worth. I love it. Do I use it? No, it's really too fancy for me to use. And it's worth a fortune. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm going to keep this one for now. But like every once in a while, I go back through things and say, am I attached to this? Nah, we have a group that we sing with, that we have what we call blind auctions, and people bring in used things that they like and we sell them, and the money goes to a charity. So we've got, every time we go through everything, we line up more stuff to bring in there, and people pay what they want. Some people can't pay a lot, and but they're going to enjoy it, and the money will go to a good cause. So that's how we get rid of it. Every once in a while, we go through and purge again until we're down to the stuff that really matters to us.
Well, I do a decluttering podcast every year, which some people laugh at.
Nice.
The woman that runs it, Jan Taylor, had this thing of, you get your grandmother's crystal or silver or whatever, and what do you do with this stuff, right? And so, first I offer it to my sister. Hey, you want this stuff? And she said, save one place setting. You save one place setting, and that's great because that's the memory of it. After speaking on our podcast this year, though, she was talking about how she found her third grade, her report card, and I'm from third grade, and I felt really good because I still have my third grade report card. Now, who's gonna want that? It's nice.
I have mine.
It's like you pick it up and you have memories and so forth. But at a certain point, it's like the layers of the onion, right? You go through, you declutter some things, you come through, you declutter some things, you come through, right? And so that's where I'm at. I go through layers of the onion. I do have a rule that anything comes in, something has to go out, usually of equivalent nature. And so this Christmas was sock Christmas. So last night I'm in my sock drawer going, okay, if I want this pair of socks, something else has to, okay, fine. So I had 5 new pairs of socks, and so 5 old pairs of socks had to go. But I'm at the point where they're all socks I like now.
Yeah, we just went through 5 shopping bags full of mismatched socks because I could never get rid of them. And some of them we love, and we ended up finding mates within the bags.
Yep.
But we just threw out 2 garbage bags full of mismatched socks. And as they were going out, I thought, but I could make puppets out of those. Well, I'll find other socks to make puppets out of.
Yeah. I always figure in what lifetime, because as an artist, I've got so much stuff, it's like, oh, I could do this out of that. So the last year I went through I could make this pile and cut it in half. And I still have more projects and years left.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I have in here. A lot of these boxes are equipment and, materials and different media that I could use for something. And once I get this room set up, I tell myself I'm going to do this. But I'm also watching for nonprofits that will take donations of things because.
Yeah, nice.
We have a lot of, I have 4 sewing machines. I don't know that I'm ever going to use 4 sewing machines. And some of them are very expensive, fancy sewing machines, but I don't know that I'm ever going to use them. And anyway, so I don't want to keep you too long. I'm waiting to see if Beth comes back from getting our oil changed. But what would you like to leave us with? You have this one last chance to share with the 9 countries who listen to my podcast. What would you like to share with them?
Well, I'd love if they would go take a look at my Moscow Nights series.com website. That branches out to all of the books, the Moscow Nights books. Moscow Nights is a lovely, haunting Russian song, by the way. And when I was over in Russia, this violinist used to come by and play it, and it's just a wonderful memory of mine. So that's how the Moscow Nights series came.
Maybe I'll find it and put it in the background on this.
Yeah, it's just a lovely. I have actually there's a link to it on the Moscow Nights Return.com website.
Okay.
There was actually a link to the song played by the Moscow Army Orchestra or something like that. But is a neat, haunting. I find it haunting, very Russian song. But I'd love it if more people would at least take a peek and decide whether they wanted to read this series, because I think it's fun. It's You know, doesn't, no one in there is you know, anybody who's living. But you know, I think you find bits and pieces of somebody you know in there somewhere, as well as, you know, a great romp. You know,
Cool.
it's a good romp, and it's got weapons, and it's got, you know, as I go on, I get more into the cyber terrorism because of the high tech in me too. So, you know, it's just, I think it's a fun read. So I'd love to get people taking a look at it, love to get feedback. You know, and again, yeah, I'm not going to be a millionaire off of this stuff, but, you know, my goal is to, you know, have people enjoy what I do. You know, in my painting, I want to bring my joy of nature to them. And in this, you know, I just want to bring a good thriller, spy thriller romp to the world. So
Well,
thank you.
thank you so much for joining me today.
I loved catching up with you. Say hi to Beth for me, and hopefully we can chat again.